Just while the presentation's lighting up, obviously, I think you can tell from both Stephen and Tom and Pat's presentations, we're really excited about the pipeline of projects that we've got. And I think it's really appropriate that the first time that we're really presenting this in any detail is to the local Tasmanian construction market. So this is by far and away the most detail we've provided to pretty much anyone outside of TasPorts. So yeah, I'm here subbing in for Ian. Ian's unfortunately stuck in a pseudo lockdown in his house. But just here to talk about the sustaining work we do and what TasPorts classifies as sustaining is essentially our bread and butter work, the stuff we do every day. Obviously, Tom and Pat have explained some really big, exciting projects that we're working on, but all the core maintenance work that goes on every day isn't going to stop, and if anything, we'd like to increase it. So a little bit about the types of work we do. So first of all, I'll explain sort of the types of assets we've got, the types of assets we work on, give you some examples of some of the projects and things like that we do in that field, and it is quite a broad cross-section of projects. And then just give you a little idea of some of the ones in the upcoming financial year. There's a lot that's sort of already underway, but there's a few still to come out for tender. And then give you a bit of an idea of the forward pipeline from there at a much higher level. But sort of how it comes about, how do we get the pipeline to work? So it's effectively what we call our 10-year infrastructure, our rolling infrastructure plan. And it really comes about from Anne-Marie and the asset management team. Anne-Marie's just sitting over there, and by all means catch up with her after. But they go out and do a whole heap of wharf inspections, building inspections, pavement inspections, identify defects, needs for replacement, level of service gaps, all those sorts of things, and they feed into that pipeline that Stephen showed earlier around the project pipeline essentially. So we prioritise and we plan, and then we set about delivering those works. Typical sort of budgets vary year to year, but I'd say in the last couple of years we've normally spent around the $20 million mark per year. That's spread across all of our sort of sustaining projects, as we call them. And that excludes things like obviously Devonport and the things Tom's talking about, and some of our larger other major projects or sort of medium-sized projects, I guess. And how we deliver them, we sort of split a little bit between TasPorts project team, which is the team that sort of sits with me, and our ops team, which also deliver about 50% of that maintenance. So they deliver a fair portion, but they deliver typically things sort of less than $50,000. I think one of the challenges TasPorts has, and Stephen sort of alluded to it earlier, is that we've got a really diverse range of assets. It's a really broad spread. It's in a lot of ways a lot more challenging than a lot of other ports. It's sort of managing 5, 6, 7 berths in one central location. We are TasPorts, and we look after all the ports across the state, including a lot of community assets and things like that. So we've got over 300 buildings, over 100 marine structures, so wharves and ramps and things like that. 182 hectares of road and rail and pavement. Put a little question mark on the underground infrastructure because we actually don't know what we've got. Certainly Anne-Marie's doing some really great work to better understand that, but we don't have a great understanding of that at the moment, would be fair to say. Over 250 navigation aids, which some of them are obviously really challenging to maintain out in the middle of the ocean. 50 harbour improvements, so channels and swing basins and things like that we've got to keep open and clear and working. Land plant and floating plant, and things like what Tom mentioned around the BCT, the Burnie Chip Export Terminal, so terminals and things like that, APSA conveyors and all those sorts of things. So we've got a huge portfolio of assets. I'm sure we're not the biggest infrastructure owner in Tasmania, but we've certainly got a really diverse portfolio. And a lot of it's ageing. I think of our marine structures, of all our sort of main wharves, I'd say about 95% of our wharves are greater than 45 years in age. So, when you're designing things for a typical 50-year life, they're towards the back end, hence some of the big remediation programs I'll talk about. So just to give you an idea of some of the works that we have been doing recently in the last sort of 12, 18 months, and try to pick a real cross-section of work that we do because it is pretty diverse. So Bellman Hangar refurbishment, which is a sort of local hangar in the airport that we run for a new tenant. We did Flinders Island bird-friendly lighting, so that was replacing a whole heap of lights on Flinders Island with effectively ones that dim down and don't attract birds in the shearwater season. Smart power pedestals, which you can all see as you leave the event and you walk around Condoc, Vic Dock, you'll see the shiny new pedestals that allow us to track and monitor power and things like that. Ro-ro ramp remediation work in King Island, that was really around servicing the Bass Island shipping service that we also run. And the BCET shiploader bogies, which is sort of the photo in the background there. So again, talking to sort of Tom mentioned earlier that the BCET's due for a fairly big life extension, depending on what we do with Tom's project. But we do need to spend a fair bit of maintenance there, and there's a program for it. Some of the other sorts of works we've done, so pedestrian upgrade in Bell Bay, so sort of all pavement and signage and things like that, making sure people can, as Tom said earlier, get in and out of our port safely is a really, really important thing. Marine ladder replacement, so statewide sort of replacement project going around all of the ladders in the state and reviewing them, the ones that are potentially non-compliant or unsafe replacing. So that's been complete. Expansion of the 3 West shed in Devonport, so that was for a customer as they were growing export in fertiliser. The current shed that they had needed to get bigger, so we extended it. ATON navigation upgrades in the south, so that was a small project run down here by the team that went and sort of upgraded a lot of the navigation aids around the south end of the state. And the MAC 23 cruise infrastructure project, which is the one that you can see in the background there, which is essentially replacing a whole heap of bollards to improve the sort of berthing capacity of the wharf. And certainly one of the recurring themes you see across TasPorts is 50-year-old wharves. Ships have got a hell of a lot bigger than they were 50 years ago. All the infrastructure needs upgrading. So we've been systematically going through and doing that over the course of probably the last 5 years. Current work's underway. So we've got a fairly big rolling wharf remediation program that has been going for a number of years now and is continuing. So we've got the Bell Bay Berth 6. Stage 2 is nearing completion. Stage 3 is about to kick off. That's been sort of a circa $12 million marine remediation project. We've just started the MAC 1 to 4 remediation project. Carl's managing that and he's in the room today. And also the Princess Wharf intermediate remediation. So again, concrete remediation is probably something that we're going to be doing for a long time, many years to come. Some of the other sorts of projects that we sort of have got going at the moment, we've got the Selfs Point fire system upgrade, which is a fairly big upgrade. Been a long time in the planning, and really happy to see that nearing completion now. Which is, I think Selfs Point imports about 50% of the state's fuel, so a really important facility and great that it will be protected for years to come. And as Tom mentioned earlier, the Macquarie 6 fender upgrades, which is effectively some temporary or short-term fendering work for the Niana. And the photo in the background is sort of the Bell Bay Berth 6 work, where you can see a lot of the remediation that's happened and the pile wrapping that's underway. So things that are upcoming in the pipeline, and this gives you a snapshot. These things are sort of within the next 6 months coming out to market to be undertaken. So there's a low-head pilot launch replacement, so that's currently in design, looking to tender that within the next 6 months. Flinders Island Marshall Yard remediation, that's a fairly big and challenging project in that, and when I say fairly big, it's in the sustaining group, so we're not talking tens of millions of dollars, but it's challenging in that it's any time anyone has got experience building pavement on Flinders Island, that's a challenge in itself because it's hard to get good aggregate and materials and things like that. So tender to be released shortly. The team's working on that. Bell Bay Berth 5 fender replacement, and also the Devonport 4 West fender replacement. So again, 2 more fender upgrade projects that are about to kick off. The photo in the background is actually a bit of a concept that our internal engineering team developed for the Devonport 4 West fender replacement system. Things sort of further out in the pipeline, so possibly might creep into this financial year, but likely the following financial year, is the interim maintenance dredging. So most of our ports are reasonably well flushed out by fairly heavy tidal movements and things like that, so we don't actually have to do a whole lot of maintenance dredging at TasPorts, which is great. But we do in Devonport, so about every 9 to 10 years we do a major dredging campaign. That's coming up. That's about a couple of years away. But in between we do a lot of interim maintenance dredging, so sweeping and things like that, bed levelling. So that's coming up. Our marine remediation program will continue, so a couple of the other wharves that we'll be focusing on fairly shortly is Inspection Head. We've already done one fairly big package there, and there's another one to go. Longreach is the same, similar area, and certainly needs some work. There's some at Burnie and also some at Devonport. As Tom mentioned before, BCET program of works. Now the total scope of that somewhat dependent on Tom's project, but there is still some critical maintenance work, still painting and structural improvements and things like that to make sure that asset sees out whatever life it needs to have. There's fairly broad property development projects, and I think Jared's in the room somewhere, and by all means have a chat to him after this. But certainly there's a lot of property opportunities and development, particularly around in the Hobart region. HV, LV replacements and upgrades is sort of a bit of a rolling program where we've been systematically going through and replacing it. And just a general pavement upgrades. We've again, pretty much every year we're doing some sort of pavement work across our ports. Just continuing, so we've got Bell Bay Berth 6, mooring infrastructure work. So that's the actual bollards and fenders are pretty good in Bell Bay, but this is to sort out the drift-off issues we have there with the high tide movements and things like that and heavy winds. So trying to work on a solution there. Bell Bay Berth 8, which is, for anyone that knows Bell Bay, the sort of big back reclaimed area that we've got, big open space. Services and access improvements at the moment, it's sort of through the rest of the port. Burnie terminal appointment system, again somewhat linked into Tom's project and the increase in traffic and volume that we're going to see through Burnie, and just trying to manage that effectively. And the Bell Bay Berth 5 and 6 reefer panel replacement. So how do you get involved? For the sustaining work, and indeed all of our work, it gets put up on Tenderlink. So TasPorts operate with a mixture of either open tenders or select tenders, depending on the process, depending on the nature of works and things like that. But generally speaking, we try to give everyone a chance that we think is interested in doing the works. We typically operate two different types of contracts, either a minor works contract for $250,000 or less, which I'm sure a lot of you in the room have already seen, or a TasPorts AS 4000 or 4902 amended, depending on whether we're going for construct only or D&C. I should mention before we wrap up that in addition to the expressions of interest that Pat will be putting out specifically for Keylink and the package that he's talking about, there'll also be a market questionnaire that comes out, and that'll be around effectively what we used for the last industry day that we had. We got all your details, and we've since used that to sort of populate key areas of expertise, and then that's where our tenders have been sort of shot out from Tenderlink from there. So if everyone can please respond to that, let us know the areas that you're interested in. We'll make sure we'll use that as a process to update both for the major projects and for the sustaining work. Key contacts, obviously first point of call is the website, and there will be some more information coming up on the website in the coming days or weeks around all of our project work. There's a project section there now which is relatively new and will be populated in the coming days, showing current work and upcoming work. And just provided the key contacts, obviously Pat for Keylink, Tom for Gateway and Macquarie 456, and Ian, who's unfortunately not here for sustaining, and a couple of the other key contacts, Jared and Anne-Marie, who I both mentioned in the presentation. So thanks everyone for coming along. I really appreciate it. I think we've had two of these now, and I've been blown away by the level of attendance and support that we've got. You're obviously all really important to us and us achieving our goals, and look forward to working with each and all of you in the coming years to come. Thank you. I think there's some light refreshments and things over there. And thanks Tash and Beck for organising it. If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have light refreshments and we probably wouldn't be here. Thank you.